Hello, it's Jeremy Osterberger. I'm here with Katie Linden, Chief Commercial Officer with AMECO. Thanks everybody for joining us today on this video and video podcast. Hey, Katie, how are you?
Good, good. How are you?
I'm doing great. So, Katie, you're on this video from home. Are you in Greenville? Where are you?
I'm actually in Kansas City,
Oh, wow.
so which is good because our office is closed today due to the hurricane going through in Greenville. So,
Okay, fantastic, good. Yeah, that's right. We want to avoid those storms, and obviously, prayers and thoughts are with everyone there, and of course, your staff as well, going through some stuff. So, so Katie, you joined the leadership team recently at AMECO. You have 25 years of construction and really power industry and infrastructure experience. Let's get to know you a little bit better. Tell our audience about your background.
sure, sure. Yeah, I've been with Amico now a little over 4 months. So it is new to me as far as coming on board with the team. I did a stint with a private equity company and in the MOT space prior to coming on to Amico, and it was really an easy decision. I wanted to get back closer to what I knew. Nothing was spinning on the roads, and there were no liquids being made. So it made more sense for me to be involved with Amico and closer to the customers and the more high industry that I had come from. And my 25 years background, 25 plus years. I'm not going to go into the exact number, but someone told me
Right.
the other day, the power plants we built when you started are now being decommissioned because they're only 35% efficient. And I said, that's great. Why don't you just kick me in the face the next time we see each other?
That is fantastic. Oh man, that's so great. I love how it's tied to your career too. That makes it funny. That's good.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
awesome. Katie,
So,
you have an MBA from Baker University. Where is that? Sorry for not knowing.
yeah, it's in Kansas. It's a small school in Kansas, and
Nice.
it's actually they had a campus in Kansas City, and I got my degree while I was working at Black and Beach. We had a partnership with them, so it was a really good opportunity to take experience from the real world and get my MBA versus just going directly from school into getting an MBA. So it was, I think, a lot more beneficial to me.
And what I find interesting, you have a political science degree from Kansas State University. So, what did you ever get into politics, or you avoided it? How did you? Tell me about that path.
Well, I was going to change the world, Jeremy, and then I decided that that might be a little bit harder to do and pay my bills. So I decided to instead of going into lobbying, and that was something that my dad said, yeah, that's not going to work again. So that's how I ended up in the power and energy industry and going to work for Black and Beach at the time. But I still enjoy the debates. I won't tell you which way I'm going, but it is interesting times from where I started in Kansas doing campaigns for Bob Dole
Wow.
to date myself all the way back to now. So it's kind of a changed landscape.
Man, amazing. Bob Dole, that's a name. All right. Well, cool. Okay. That's an interesting background. Thanks for sharing a little bit. Well, let's get into Amico's value proposition. Look, a lot of folks know Amico, but I want to let you talk a little bit about an overview of Amico, especially as it relates to the industrial community. Talk a little bit about the company services to the market.
Sure. So, Amico is really a unique entity in that we don't have a direct competitor in our space, which is also what drew me to Amico, in that you have a lot of equipment rental providers out there that are on every street corner, but Amico is really a integrated site services. We are a site service company. We provide everything from large cranes all the way down to, buggies on the site, hydration, small tools and consumables, fencing, anything that is needed for a construction site in the way of site services, and everything in between in the management and training of the labor on the site for site services. So really, I say this is, from where I came from, the general contractors that I work for really focused in on every project on building the power plant center, the turbines, the HRSG, or building the ISBL for the facility, building the LNG focused area. Um, Amico does everything to enable that happening, everything on site, and provides everything that they need in order to do that. And so having a company like ours that has people very specialized in understanding all of that site services that quite frankly is notoriously historically overruns on every job because it's not the focus. And we manage that for our owners. So it really does make us unique in that, especially in this environment, this labor intensive environment where it's really hard to find all the labor that's needed to do these large scale construction jobs, having a company like ours that can come in and manage that for the owners is very specialized. So that's why I say we don't have a direct competitor because there's people out there that do hydration, there's some that do equipment, there's some that do tools, but nobody does it all together. Nobody brings it all together the way that AMECO does.
No, thanks, Katie. So let's dig into where we're headed here. There's so much going on, especially in the need for additional power capacity in North America. All the semiconductor manufacturing facilities coming in, construction of data centers rising up in various states. Um,
Hmm.
the electrification of assets is also a part of this. I interviewed Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick in the state of Texas, and his statement, to paraphrase, was, look, we can't add all this to our current grid. We've got to expand the sources of our energy and driving new power to come online. So there's even an additional need in relationship to construction. I mean, what type of pressure is that going to put on the construction labor market?
Yeah, it's incredible the amount of new build that's going on in the US. And I think, some of this has been driven by the advancement in technology, of course, the electrification of our transportation system, the electrification, the grid needs and stability needs there, but also the pharmaceuticals. Post-COVID, we're moving a lot of that pharmaceutical back into the US and we're doing a lot of build around that. Frankly, Ozempic is driving a lot of investment in building pharmaceutical capabilities here that makes a lot of sense. So when you have that many industries that need to be advancing in large scale construction at the same time, and we're trying to onshore so much of this technology, now being really the OPEC of LNG, we are the largest exporter, building all these export facilities. And those export facilities are an incredible amount of man hours and labor and time intensive. I mean, we're seeing peaks of 1,200 to 2,000 on these job sites, just massive, massive job sites in comparison to now what we need, where we've got to shift investment back from the grid to new generation. Because as I mentioned earlier, the baseload generation, coal, is aging out. Baseload generation, nat gas, is aging out. So, and we hadn't been replacing it. Fossil fuels has been kind of on the block of no, we're not going to go there, but renewables can't replace that, and renewables intermittency can't fill in that gap on the data centers. You mentioned Texas, but there's several states that have said data centers, you can't come here unless you bring your own power because we can't have you on the grid. They just simply cannot build the grid fast enough. One of my former company, Quanta, they're the best in the business when it comes to transmission and distribution, but even they can't find all the labor that's needed in order to bring about the level of construction on distribution and transmission. And then you have what's going on today. I mean, we have 3 million people in the US that are without power after a storm hits. Quanta, I guarantee, is bringing their crews from all over North America, Canada, to that area to try to get them back online quickly. But when you have that kind of build that has to happen, you can't be focusing on the new build that needs to be happening. So that's where, again, AMECO comes in. We can help increase the efficiency of the utilization of site services and decrease the man hours needed in a lot of areas. Our integrated scaffolding solution, our solution of having one team that's managing all of those functions for an owner on site reduces the number of man hours and FTEs they're needing or craft support and craft leadership that they're needing because we're managing that for them. That's absolutely critical. I say the new golden rule is he who brings the labor gets the gold.
Mm-hmm.
It really is, there's just a finite amount of labor.
Or make that labor more efficient, right? So,
Exactly, exactly. So we're constantly looking at the tools and processes that we can put in place on the managed tool programs to make the craft more efficient on site, to ensure that they've got the tools that they need, the equipment that they need in the time they need it. And there's, with this much build, there's not a lot of space in some of those areas.
That's
You
right.
look at Louisiana and where we're building a lot of these export, they're trying to put very large facilities on a very tight site. You have to have a company that knows how to manage the equipment placement in a small footprint where you don't have laydown area, bringing things to site just in time, but not too late to keep the craft efficient and keep the project on schedule. And that's the biggest challenge right now for most all of these large projects is getting the labor on site, getting them efficient in the time frame to meet the schedule.
It's okay. You touched on pieces of Amico's integrated site services approach, but
Mhm.
let's take it to the client. How can an integrated site services strategy really impact, a project? And does that also apply to maintenance, turnaround, nested maintenance? I mean, tell me how far that goes. So,
Yeah, that really is from everything from the capital project from the beginning of planning, where we can be working with the owner to identify here's where placement of equipment needs to be. Here's the scaffolding plan and how we're gonna, as the construction goes, to line that up with the site, with the design. We have the design capability also to work with the owner to have that completely outlined ahead of time. So it's not in the past, it would be out on the site. Okay, well, that's going to go up. Well, I guess we need to build scaffold there. And we need to build scaffold there. It's already planned way in advance. And the same with the outage and turnaround and maintenance. That's so critical that the plan of where those items need to be in the time that they need to be them. So we do that for many of our owners and longtime service agreements. Irving Oil is a customer of ours that we do all of their uh, maintenance and work with them on their outages. So it's critical that we have that upfront planning and then integrated with the owner throughout the life cycle of the project and the facility. That helps the owner in knowing and having a team on site that's very familiar from the beginning to the end.
no, fantastic, Katie. Well, Katie, before we wrap up, any comments you want to make? Anything else you want to convey today in our discussion?
I think the probably the most unique thing about AMECO is, we come from a heritage of being a part of a large EPC. We're divested 3 years ago. So the historical DNA of us from 75 years of doing that just brings a different approach for our owners and mindset about how we go about supporting construction. And as we move further into these data centers that are going to take up, every study showed 9% of the US energy by 2030 is going to be needed for data centers. Those chips are only going to get quicker. They're only going to get more efficient. They're only going to need more data centers. And so I think as we see that increase, we've got to continue to work with together in our industry at all levels to identify how do we become more efficient, as there's just not going to be the bodies and the man hours that available. So it's really a part of that unique solution. I think our industry as a whole, the industry that I've come to love, as I said, starting out, who would have thought I'd end up in this instead of politics? But there is a lot of politics in the construction industry. Is that we work together, and I think AMECO is really very unique position to help owners in being that partner.
When you mentioned the 9%, I look at my our mess closet, or I guess you call it a mess pantry of my kids, and I think like my kids are taking 9% of the power grid because of all their electronics. So we need
Yeah,
18% is what I'm thinking is going to happen here. So, well,
right.
well, Katie, we thank you so much for your time and appreciate you coming on today and giving us a little update on what you guys are seeing in the construction labor market and a little bit about AMECO. So, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll have you on again in the future.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate it. Take care and
So,
have a good day.
absolutely, Katie. So, for anyone watching, we thank you so much for joining us. Remember, learn more about AMECO at ameco.com. And also, for more videos, news, podcasts, and project information, visit bicmagazine.com. Remember, everybody, it's what we do together that counts.